Why don't we kick off the proceedings by, if you could introduce yourselves. You've got your mics, which is great. So, let's start at the end.
Hi, I'm Simon Barratt from Cooperative Innovations. We're a VR AR studio. We produce our own technologies for multi-user VR and AR, as well as original content and work for hire across everything from architecture and training through to games and experiences. Been in the games industry for 20 years before that, doing a wide range of different work and technology and different game stuff, basically. Oh, and I also run the UK Mixed Reality Summit, Mixed Reality Group, which is related to this, I guess.
Thank you, Simon. I'm John Hibbins, Psytec Games, most known for Windlands 2, one of the few games that's topped Beats over for a couple of weeks in the charts, and we've been spending about the last 5 years making successful VR games.
Okay, hi, I'm Christina from Thoughtfish. We are doing augmented reality in the broadest sense. So we developed a technology, a platform with which is basically a one-stop shop for any kind of real-world data. So if you want your game or your product to react on a context of your user, you can do it with our tech. So we are reacting on time, location, weather, moon phases, aviation data, the fact that you're in a train which is 5 minutes late, height data, demographics, crime, whatever is out there, we can use to change a gameplay experience. We are not only providing that platform, we're also doing games on that. The current game is the very first augmented reality farming game.
Hi, I'm Nancy Basi. I'm wearing two hats. So I'm the VP of the VRAR Vancouver, as well as the Exec Director for Media Entertainment at the Vancouver Economic Commission. So we look at VRAR from an economic development lens, government policy, and things like that.
I got a mic. Hi, my name is Harri. I am the founding partner of Play Ventures. It's a brand new early stage gaming fund. We have a 30 million fund for pre-seed and seed investments in gaming. And previously, I was the director of Nordic XR Startups, which was a pre-seed VR and AR accelerator and pre-seed investor in the Nordics. I've seen the XR world pretty closely for the last 2 years, and I will continue to see it. Even though I'm now more involved with the fund, I will still stay on board of Nordic XR and continue to look at the XR space.
Brilliant. I'm Marcus Pullen. I'm from Blue Donut Studios, and we make VR and AR. But we have a narrative slant, and we also work with comics. And Christina and I also were working tabletop and board games as well. Okay, so I want to get cracking with my first question, which is, I've laughingly called it the icebreaker myself, but XR, it's been put on the back burner, right? Discuss. Shaking of heads, I like shaking of heads. No, why is this not true?
It's not what we expected it to be, I think. I think that in the past we've had technology goes from military to games to the rest of the world. And what we're seeing in Vancouver is we've gone from hoping it would be games. Some games are working out very well, but we're seeing a lot of companies moving into the enterprise space. Mm-hmm. So, we have issues with headsets. They're not comfortable. The resolution's not good enough. So until we get that key that's going to get people to adopt it into their lives and pay that large amount of money, we're seeing companies now using it for enterprise solutions. So it could be anything from mining solutions. It could be manufacturing solutions. And things like that. So I think that it's there. It's just not what we expected. And we're seeing people who have large development budgets, like a truck manufacturer who has $1 million budget, being able to put money into it to find ways of manufacturing for less costs.
So I think I absolutely agree with Nancy on the enterprise side, but I think on the gaming side, looking at PlayStation VR approaching something like 5 million headsets now, and a lot of investment going in from Sony still. Oculus Quest and all the other standalone headsets this year, I think, expect them to do well in terms of not sucking up people's battery life when they're wanting to play a standalone mobile game, a mobile VR game, I should say, and having 6 degrees of freedom tracking, which is ultimately where really good immersive VR content is, and all the new headsets and the content that comes with that, I think we'll see a big boom. Plus location-based entertainment, whether it's arcades and other things, the numbers seem to be steadily increasing in terms of revenue numbers from them as well. So we're really excited across enterprise and gaming and entertainment and the amount of funding going into it.
And I would echo a lot of that. I think having some vision across all the platforms, we've now got a few titles on PlayStation VR and HTC and Oculus over many years. The one thing that's very clear to me is we don't have a dinosaur tail. Our games that we started selling 5 years ago still sell as strongly today as they did 5 years ago. So there's evidence in gaming sales being quite good over time. And obviously when you stack that up with the second or third title, that's where it starts to pay for itself. And I think that you need to do what we've done, go to every platform. It's a must to make the revenue. But yeah, I mean, if you stick at it and you keep bringing out content, then you're also getting better at it so that you start to rise above in the tide of games and end up with more sales and being unique in what your proposition is. Yeah, I mean, I would love it to be 10 times the size, and I think Facebook recently at OC5 said that, you know, every one of the markets that are out there, the PlayStation VR, HTC, need to be 10 times the size to be a sustainable business, and it's common. And we've had funding support ourselves for platforms to help with that growth and allow you to make content. And I don't think that's going away short term, but there's an inevitability of VR. There are more headsets, and same on AR, there are more headsets available today than there've ever been. The numbers are steadily growing. There are new devices coming out that are lighter and easier and more affordable, and that's only going to continue, you know, with PlayStation VR 2 and the list of Valve's rumoured headsets and things like that. And it's becoming in common psyche as well. There are a lot of people that have tried VR now, bad or good, but it's becoming more and more likely somebody will jump on the bandwagon at some point. From a gaming perspective, some of the best content ever has been released this year, and they are selling really strongly. It's just an early market. I actually think there's a realisation of the market space. It's not that it's not growing, it's just this is what it is. This is the realism of it. It's at the bottom of that curve of growth. And you know, it may take another 5 or so years and a number of iterations of headsets and the software cycles in order for it to truly become compelling for every individual. But I think it's inevitable that the screen technology, both on AR and VR, will replace our common screen technologies today, flat screens and mobiles and etc.
I think that we are at a point where we don't really know what this all is about. So we are at the beginnings. So one thing which is always flabbergasting me is like we don't have proper. We think we have proper definitions for everything, but nearly no one really knows what it is. So we're talking about VR and AR, always in the same sentence, even if both of these things are totally different and totally require different technologies. So, and we're talking about mixed realities and these kind of realities. And when I look at the official definitions, you can find in, I don't know the English word for it, the Duden, so the book where you look up definitions, or you go to Wikipedia. Then you have, okay, augmented reality is a technology that superimposes a digital image onto the real world. But hey, this is super boring, and this is not what augmented reality should be about. And we are limiting ourselves so much in the way we think about all these topics instead of letting the whole world influence a digital experience. No, it is only a picture. Oh my God, boring. So I think that the biggest problem we are facing in this whole topic, we cannot even say, is it living or dead, or what is it? It's a hybrid creature. We are so in the beginnings that we still are at the moment to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what should it be, what will it be, what could it be. So we are not nearly there, and we're always mixing up things. So VR and AR are different things. Nevertheless, everyone is taking it in the same breath. This is driving me crazy.
Just to jump on the location-based, I'm talking from VR perspective. We have a portfolio company in Nordic XR called Pixeli that has 3 locations in the greater Helsinki area in Finland. And they have been sold out for the last 3 months, all of the 3. locations. So there's definitely an uptick in consumer interest in, and they recently they upgraded to HTC Vive Pros, so it's a better quality, and they're seeing people from all across the board, like young kids, middle-aged people, old people. Everybody wants to try it, and I think location-based will be super important in allowing the masses to experience the immersive content, and to get that feeling what it's like. And obviously those location-based operators will have a great responsibility in the sort of content they present to these audiences. But I think, from that side, I wouldn't definitely say that XR is dying, or, well, XR, like Christina said, it's hard to put VR and AR in the same sentence. But I would say that, the consumer interest is getting better and better, and it's just, it's from what we've seen from them, it's like, people want to experience these immersive that content, and they're willing to pay for it as well. So I'm incredibly bullish from that standpoint.
So there's a definite feeling of I think a keyword, sophistication, isn't it? There's a sophistication in terms of the content that's being created. The developers are getting to understand the vernacular of each individual piece of technology, and I agree with you. Again, augmented reality is so different from virtual reality. There's no point putting them in the same sentence, really. And there are different skill sets involved with those, but obviously the commonality we're talking about games, and we've said this before about fun and how important that is. Consumers are understanding better the concepts of what virtual reality is, what its potential is, and augmented reality. And again, as Harri said, geolocation is really, really key component, isn't it? We've seen that very obviously in Pokemon Go and other location-based augmented reality games. And I would say, again, with virtual reality, there is great opportunity, isn't there? So sophistication in the marketplace as well is something that we're just starting to see. So if I was an investor, I don't want to put Harri on the spot, but am I wise to keep the money in the back pocket, or should I be looking at the long game? Oh, go on.
Don't invest.
Don't invest.
It's a very difficult space right now. It is unlikely to be profitable short term. It's just fact. Without platform support, it's unlikely you will write profit, even at low levels. You could be a number one hit, be out there in the market on all platforms, and still not realistically sustain a full business with 20 people. And that's the consumer expectation. But the platforms aren't unwise to that. I mean, if the platforms aren't sponsoring your game, it's unlikely you will get VR or AR support out of that. It's the long play. It's from an investment point of view, I think it's investing in businesses that you believe in the long play for, not the short play, which is an unusual thing for most investors, because most investors are after the short play.
So the traditional VC fund is usually a 10-year fund, where the first 4 or 5 years is the investment period where you do new investments, and then you hold on to them, and you can wish for an early exit, but often that's not the case, and you don't want early exits because you want those companies to maximize their value. So I would say from our perspective, it's definitely early, and I've seen that from running an accelerator, but at the same time, to John's point, I'm incredibly bullish on some of the standalone platforms to crack through the market. And if I think from a timing perspective, I think this would be a good time for VCs to make bets in the best companies in anticipation of that market growth, to be sort of first in. But I do agree, if you're looking for very short-term, profitable, quick exits, it's probably not the right area to invest in at the moment.
But it could well be a good point to look at investing in the company as a company, because obviously it's not just about the technology.
Well, that's what we do. We invest in the companies, and we back founders instead of just projects.
Yeah, it's founders rather than projects. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's. Can I just?
Yeah, please do.
It's a very difficult time for investors because often we see two types of investors. One are tech investors who want to invest in a technology, and they really feel like, if I own the technology, that's going to be my moneymaker. But I come from the entertainment side, and I see IP development as the moneymaker. So I think that investors. From what I'm seeing locally in my own ecosystem, the investors need to be educated in the benefits of IP investing because that could be the gift that keeps on giving in multiple platforms. But they're just not there. They'd rather give $40 million for a piece of land in Russia that may have minerals on it and not give like $1 million to a company to invest in IP. We need to kind of do a bit of re-educating for investors.
Okay. From our perspective, I mean, we were when founding Thoughtfish, we were a bit gambling on the fact that that kind of product, so be it a location-based AR game, be it a context-sensitive product, so being a bit smarter, reacting more on users, was the gamble we were doing. So we were developing the technology platform we are having today way before Pokemon Go was even announced. And I was running through the gaming industry for quite a long time, for a couple of years, where everyone was telling me, oh, this kind of product is super uninteresting. Location-based doesn't work. No, the AR aspect, we're not there yet, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did 10 days ago was we opened up our platform for third-party developers. And at this moment, we didn't even announce it. We don't have a fancy website. I'm just talking face-to-face with different developers. So people I know, people I met, people I even don't think that they had something like that in the pipeline. And what I found super hot and super interesting is that nearly everyone I talked to subscribed directly after our conversation because they all have something in the pipeline, wanting a bit more than just geolocation, or wanting to enrich the augmented reality experience with additional data points. But they all had the problem that they didn't find how to pull it off without developing from scratch. So, so from my perspective, it is a super interesting time to invest, but more into technologies. Because from the product side, we still have to find out what will work, what will not work, and we are running into a future where we have seen billions of investment going into AR technologies, but nearly no investment going into platforms or companies which will be able to cater for the need once AR glasses come out, or contact lenses, or whatever it will be. So this is coming, and there have been investments big time in that. But who is to build all the stuff people will consume with it? And this is coming.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Is now's a good time to ride the wave of the initial investment that's been put in by the big hardware developers and the big software platform developers. We've mentioned Unity, the big buy-ups that Apple have made in augmented reality. You know, they wouldn't do it without really thinking about a long-term goal, would they? They wouldn't, would they? So as a developer, it makes sense. When we're talking about investment, is making your own investment into the technologies is not a bad move, because it's probably helping to future-proof your business. Would you say that's fair?
And there's also, you forgot, like Niantic just raised a ton of money as well. And I think from Niantic's standpoint, to Christina's point, from what I understand, they are trying to use what they've learned with Pokemon and what they're doing with Harry Potter to create a platform for other developers as well to utilize. But those plans are probably very early still.
Yeah, I think they're really looking at building those things that they can, as you said, take that knowledge, technology. They made some good acquisitions in terms of, I can't remember the Boston-based company they acquired now, but doing a lot of the local tracking and the sort of wand-based combat, which I expect we'll be seeing in Harry Potter AR. I mean, you could argue that some of the bigger companies tend to buy companies just for protective reasons rather than actual productive, positive reasons, but hopefully it's all for good and we see some good technologies coming through, because, yeah, we need that support for when the AR headsets are ready in 5-10 years, whatever it's going to be, for those to be really good. and obviously Apple and, as John said earlier, Valve and a few other people are working on interesting stuff which will be coming along soon, which again will be a big change in where the industry is going.
Yeah, I think I just want to say it's inevitable, and it is definitely not dying. Just to repeat the first question, it's just inevitable, and it may not. Yeah, it may not be us that actually prove that point. It may be our next generation, but who will just be used to it from birth. And you know, because it's inevitable, then yeah, everything around it's inevitable.
Yeah, so when we're very old and crusty, we can look back a bit like when we started out with the internet, and how you can imagine that. Yeah, how did that work out?
Black and white TV was awesome.
So you know, it's a frontier still. It's a pioneer thing. The sophistication's improved. Opportunities are still there. Opportunities are now to get ready for the inevitability of the next wave of both hardware innovation, but also platform innovation. And that's the thing I want to go on to next is looking at platforms. So let's just all assume that we've been working hard on our I hate using the word XR, but for shorthand, XR projects, and we've all got some projects, and there's some questions that we're asking ourselves, and the first one I've got here is, if you could change, this isn't mine, I didn't come up with this question, you came up with this question, I liked it though. If you could change one thing about the XR ecosystem, what would it be? Do you want to answer that one first?
No, I want everyone else to answer. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, we touched on it already. It's the investment side and the content creation support. I think that the technology and the platforms are essential,
yeah.
But we're not going to find uptake unless we give people meaningful content to absorb. And right now, you know, there is some great stuff, but if we want adoption, you know, beyond 5 million, which if we think about how many smartphones there are, I mean, we're not even scratching the surface on who we can get to adopt. We need to have more investors say, I'm going to give you money to create great content, and we're going to, you know, get out there and see how people react to it. I think storytelling is really important. I think that we have to, this is the one industry that's going to bring everyone together, because we need, you know, film storytellers and writers. We need user interface experts from games. We need amazing visual effects and animation people, and we need technologists. So this is the one thing that's going to bring everyone together. But we need the money to create meaningful content.
Yeah, it's not a game of a single person, as you absolutely say. You know, you need artists, you need storytellers, you need technicians, marketers. It's a group effort, isn't it? But the money to pay for it all. Show me the money.
You want to go?
I can have a go. I think Simon wants to speak as well. I think it's meaningful resolution to real world problems. And I think at the last time I did a panel here, I'd said that, you know, maybe Skype 2.0 or something like that. But as soon as the AR and VR and everything in between starts to answer at scale enterprise human issues that we've really got, as the mobile phone did, then it starts to scale fairly rapidly. As soon as it becomes the norm that actually we solve this problem by using these devices, then that's the one thing that I think we've not yet found, and it's a massive catalyst. It might not be one thing, it might be 50 things, but actual real-world problems resolved at scale does not exist today in VR or AR. We've got games and we've got interesting things and exercises and trials, but actually they don't change the world. And I think those products that are coming along to change the world are on the horizon.
Killer app.
I'd like to see even more support from the platforms themselves. I think they are understaffed with their developer relations, and it's, I think, was it Magic Leap who announced the grant fund, and they got buried with thousands of applications, and I don't even know how to scale that, but what I do know is that the platform should put everything they got and their best foot forward in supporting developers to try and figure out, like, what is that killer content, and how do we get more of that into these platforms.
I think that's it. I think it's not one piece of content, it's lots of pieces of content that prove valuable enough. And I think the other part that the platform holders need to play is the awareness. So obviously location-based entertainment, as Harri was saying before, is exposing people to really good experiences which are curated, which are obviously of a certain standard level. I think things like Google Cardboard are great for certain use cases, but if that's someone's impression of what VR is, then it's completely different to 6 Degrees of Freedom fully tracked VR. And likewise for AI, you can have different level of experiences with that. So once you've got the awareness, these various apps, the price points, the support from the platforms and everything else starting to combine, that's where we start to see a tipping point. I think it'll just suddenly happen at some point, hopefully sooner.
Well, I really like that you mentioned meaningful. So meaningful experience, meaningful features. So I think one thing which was really, I mean, one example from Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is the AR game. So, okay. It's a location-based AR game, maybe. So, but one thing which was really obvious is that everyone turned off. So after you caught one Pokemon with the camera open, and you saw how fast your battery was drained, everyone just turned out this feature. So it didn't help you catch the Pokemon. It made it a bit harder because you had no reference to the field of view was a bit off, and no one really used this feature after looking at it once or twice and maybe taking one fun shot of their Pokemon onto the toilet. So that was the thing, and the thing was, it was cool eye candy wise, but it wasn't cool because it wasn't cool in the long term because it didn't add meaning. So it was a feature for the feature's sake, but it wasn't a feature which really required AR or the AR view. So I think this is something we also have to learn, and that is why I think we were so in the beginnings. We have to learn how to make these experiences really meaningful and give me back something I really want.
Cool. Okay. So I want to talk about the platforms themselves, because we said that's a really important element. We're going to need good platforms to help get exposure. What makes a good platform?
Discoverability.
Yeah.
The war that's really just started, Epic Games Store and all the other stores that are out there, they primarily make a lot of money out of those stores. They take 30% of your money for that, and the times have changed, and I don't think they're changing, and that's causing them problems. And there's a new horizon. I mean, they solve two problems for me as a publisher. One is distribution of my content, so hosting something somewhere and distributing that en masse to a lot of people. And two is taking cash from people around the world. Yeah. And both of those problems are being solved in alternative ways now. You've got peer-to-peer I could potentially host without very little cost or any cost at all, with peer-to-peer or future blockchain unencryption and unlocking from central source. And secondly, the money is also being solved by that same system, is that, I don't need to take currency from all over the world. I could have one common currency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tezos, whatever, and that is my currency of take, and it automatically converts to currency at a local point of presence. And that distribution is going to become a real problem. And then the store is only left with one thing, which is discoverability, and it's the ability to find good content quickly. I recently installed a new PC and had to install four clients on the same machine that all run real time in order to get my content, because I think it was Origin, Steam, Oculus, and another one, the Epic one, just to get the games I want. So I think those problems are going to be solved. I think the stores are all going to be about the discoverability, and the costs are going to come down and should be already down.
I don't think you're going to escape the different silos of content, though, ultimately. As much as, you had the Oasis with Ready Player One and one place to go for everything, I think ultimately these big companies won't be allowed to get big enough that one exists that does everything. It's nice in kind of a fiction land, but I think ultimately these big players are going to always want their own bit of the internet and digital carved out for themselves. Well, I don't really see how we get away from that easily.
It's the same problem, isn't it, with streaming video? How many different streaming channel providers are there, and is that actually what we're really facing? Is that we're all fighting for the attention of the customer?
Yeah, I mean, Netflix said their main competitor is Fortnite.
Yeah, they're scared
in terms of screen time, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, in terms of discoverability and amount of content out there, when the barriers to entry for any market come down, more content will exist in those areas. I mean, right now, VR and AR require certain skills, or require quite a bit of risk in terms of the businesses, so therefore the barrier is quite high. But at some point that will become lower as well and more attractive as a business, and discoverability becomes more of an issue again. So I think there are inevitable problems whatever platform and market and future we live in, really. You just hope that the good content rises to the top, I guess.
Anybody else? Yeah, Christina?
Yeah, I think the problem is that the good content doesn't always rise to the top because we are fighting the big user acquisition war. So it's basically, if you want to be seen, you have to pour tons of money into your project just to get up into the rankings, etc., etc. So it's basically, if you're doing something very innovative and you're a very small team with very limited funds, you have nearly no way of being seen unless you stumble across the right Apple employee who's giving you a feature, and we all know that a feature is not a feature anymore. So even that was ripped away because their features are pretty small and so on and so forth, and all the algorithm in the background are not really helping to sniff out really different, really cool stuff. So it's getting. My impression is it's getting streamlined more and more and more. It's getting more repetitive. We're overcrowded. I mean, let's face it, we're in a deep red ocean, and it doesn't even matter if you're doing that kind of game or another kind of game or an AR game or a VR game. We're in the same red ocean because we don't have the differentiators. So we're all fighting for this limited amount of time, and ultimately, it's again money who's going to win the war at this moment.
So it's boiling down to money again. It's the M word. Damn it.
Something that's still missing from almost all storefronts and platforms is true personalization of the content you like, and it's relatively. I mean, it's crazy if you you look at Netflix what it recommends, and it's pretty much hit and miss. PSN is even worse. I mean, I think for 3 years it was empty for me. Like games you may like, never had anything. I've seen a couple of interesting founders this week who are trying to solve this through psychology. So creating psychological profiles of users, but those are third-party platforms on top of platforms, and we'll see about that. But true personalization could be, if we get there someday, could be an interesting way to solve some of the discovery issues.
So personalisation, that needs information. Privacy is a big thing. Discoverability is so important. Do you think machine learning is going to bring anything to the fight?
It's dangerous. I mean, the whole thing is quite dangerous because we all already live in a bubble and don't really realise it. If I go to my computer that's got my search history and search for Egypt, I will get a UK-based thing on my relevance to Egypt history or something. If you're based in Egypt and search for the word Egypt, you will get your local, it's like, and, so there's a lot of already bubbleization of your own perspective happening. I mean, Netflix is really interesting. I think I've used an example today, but Netflix have at least 7 variations of every icon for every show, and they actually serve the icon based on your viewing history and stuff. And so I'm already in a bubble when I log onto my own account in Netflix and I see things that look more attractive to me, that made look a little bit more actiony because I'm more into action. And I think it's just early days of creating these bubbles that you are in your own world being served the dangerous content that is forcing you more and more down those bubbles, and less exposed to things that may actually broaden your horizons.
Serendipity. This is what we're missing, isn't it?
Yeah. So to continue on John's thing, one of the examples that one of the startup founders who had this psychological profiling thing was that they could create a roadmap for a developer, personalized with each player going forward. So basically, that would lead deeper and deeper into your own bubble without you actually, experiencing something completely new. And I think that's a dangerous route as well. I mean, it's exciting, but it's from a creative standpoint, very interesting and very dangerous. And Netflix is already doing. If you go to Netflix route, I mean, they've created some of their content based on data they've seen that these are the type of shows people want to see. So let's create more content like this. So you know.
That's why there's endless amounts of the chef's table now, because of me, basically, I think. Yeah.
I think that's why we touched on how things are affecting people individually, and I think that for the short term, companies are going to have to look at real world problems and try and move outside of the distribution models that we're seeing now. For example, there's a company in Vancouver called Precision OS that is a game developer and a surgeon combined, and it goes into training with the HoloLens on how to do surgery before you actually do it on the human being. So they scan the human being, you practice on the HoloLens, and then you can see exactly what you're dealing with within a human. So, you may not make a ton of money at the beginning, but every university might want to use this, and that's how you're selling yourself. You're selling a product to somebody and solving a real world problem, as opposed to having an amazing product, putting it on one of the platforms and hoping people see it. So it's a bit different.
You're seeing it as a shall I say a B2B route, and using
or
the innovation
education, or an education option or things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Can we just touch on the idea of the VR browser, and do you see any merit in this? I'm not so sure myself about how much time people spend in VR space wanting to kick up a browser and have a look round, but do you think there's any merit to the things like Firefox Reality, because HTC have made that their default browser? And is there a way, maybe through using the browser to discover games or make a web-based marketplace through the VR browser, or is that a complete waste of time?
No, I think the real world human being, that's how they're going to find stuff. You go down that rabbit hole until you find something of interest and play around with it a little bit.
Yeah, I think of the browser side of things, that idea of endless amounts of screen that are available to you. So if you are going around with your Oculus Quest or whatever standalone headset in the end of this year, and you can have your infinite screens and your browsers and everything else, if VR content in the browser then becomes a bigger thing because it's quicker to develop, or it's dynamic content you can deliver through WebVR or whatever it is, that could be interesting, like you say, for the marketing point of view, because it would be a nice way, rather than showing a 2D shot of what would be a VR 3D immersive game, it's a nice way to deliver it. But I think we're probably a good 6 months away from something good in that area.
Yeah, I think it's good to have the technology stack. It's very interesting, will serve purpose for reasons. But overall, I think we've already got a lot of friction in the whole space. It's like even putting the headset on is friction. Picking up controllers is definitely friction. Remembering where the buttons is friction. Every single headset I put on operates slightly different with different controls. And AR doesn't even scratch the surface of that friction. It's like it's just the same. The fact is, there's no normalization of it, and it's not frictionless. Even getting them running requires installing and setup processes. Until that normalizes into a friction-free thing where you just put any headset on anywhere and it just detects who you are and you're straight into an environment you're familiar with and you know what you're doing, it's difficult to see how adding another friction layer of opening up a browser, navigating to a space or whatever. I sort of think the protocols are magical, and I think that it's really good service to provide, but it's a layer of application interface that should be abstracted in some way through a browser.
Unless that becomes the default that you boot into straight away, of course. But I don't see that happening in terms of storefronts and, again, the discoverability piece of it.
But isn't that exactly how you find out what will work, what will not work? So, it wouldn't be the thing that springs to mind that I would need it and that I would want it, but we have to go down so many different routes at this point to really figure out. So and when we figured out, okay, that is a route we cannot go down because it's adding friction and it's stupid, then someone comes along and has the perfect solution how to revolutionize that kind of browser, and where the user interface and the interaction is completely different to what we are seeing now. And this might lead to the fact that we will just go down the route with where we see it in all the science fiction movies, that we're interacting with browsers and different screens in this swipey motion thingy, and this is really, really super cool. But I think it's so difficult to judge anything at this point because we still don't know what this is. So we still don't know what VR can do in 5 years, and if we don't check it out. And same with AR, and same with all the other stuff which is coming our way.
So other things coming our way. I want one more question about experience and about thinking about developing. How you're going to look at developing your product in terms of your audience. So, looking at social, how important do you think social is to XR? So, you go on, you've got it.
That's
all
right,
right.
this one.
Giving you any
Yeah,
clarification.
our
He's
last
on
game
fire.
was social, so
Yeah,
I've
go
got
on.
a good perspective.
You've got
I mean,
to,
it's
yeah.
critical. You can't make a game without it now. In the VR space, if you're not making a game with social, it's please think again. It's absolutely amazing seeing the light and day difference between us people playing the content together and not together, and that just needs to scale out so we can all play together. Frankly, I think it's a fascinating area. It's only going to grow, and I'm fully invested behind that. It's just starting.
Cooperative in our company name isn't an accident, and that was 2.5 years ago. So multi-user has always been what we felt was going to be the amplifier, the multiplier to any experience. So it's always been great in MMOs and everything else where you meet other people and those people become what the story is about, because going through a shared story together is much better than just by yourself and an individual experience. So whether it's our full body tech or voice chat or lip sync or simulating eye gaze and stuff like that, all of these things we've been building are about making multi-user experiences, whether it's for entertainment or for enterprise purposes, because ultimately people are the best AI we're ever going to be able to develop in one of these experiences, and much cheaper to develop as well, just putting someone else in it.
So just speaking from purely selfish reasons, I would go the opposite, because I more lean towards the introvert side, in that I want to be able to put on my wearable suit, pretend I'm in the Caribbean on a floaty mattress on a beach somewhere, and have the wind hit my face and the sun, feel the sun on me, and use it more as a wellness tool. I think that's really, I think if we can figure out how that is monetized, I think that would be something very interesting that I would kind of move towards as far as instead of interactive.
I would like to two things. So I think it's so counterintuitive when we talk about VR and making it a social experience, because the first thing I do with VR is putting glasses on and shutting myself completely down from my environment. So I totally get that social is important, but with VR, I think it's totally counterintuitive. Nevertheless, it might be super important. With AR, on the other hand, so when we're talking about these geolocation AR games, social, I think, is super important. However, it's incredibly hard to pull off in the real geolocation AR way, because the communities need to be huge. So we have seen this with Pokemon Go, that right at the beginning, when they poured tons of users onto the game, where people actually met at some Pokestops and were farming together. That was super nice, but it took a really short amount of time. We still have a tremendous amount of players playing Pokemon Go, but they don't meet up anymore because they are so thin spread all over the world. So we start putting social elements into the game, which are social features like any other kind of game. So with our farming game, it's visit your friend's farm. Yeah, but you could do this without geolocation or with geolocation. It doesn't really matter, because people are so thin spread. If we really make it geo-based, then most of the people would never ever meet other people. So this is, it's so fun, because with VR it's so counterintuitive, and with AR it's intuitive that you need social, but it's so hard to pull off.
From games perspective, all of the massive hits of the last 10 years more or less have been about playing with other people, and it's so natural for us humans to want to play with other humans, and in VR especially, the sense of presence of playing with somebody else is incredible. Like, I can be playing with Simon I can be in Singapore and Simon is in London, and we're fighting, together side by side, killing a bunch of monsters. And you don't get there with your regular 2D multiplayer games. You'll never get there. And I think if you haven't experienced that, like a multi-user VR thing, go ahead and try it, because it's amazing. And I would even take that to AR side. Like, it is, I disagree a little bit, Christina, because I think this summer I saw more Pokemon Go players together than ever before, because they were doing the raids together. So I mean, and those were not like little kids; they were like grown people doing raids together. And there's something so natural about that, doing that together, even though it's a little bit funny, just everybody's just tapping on their phones next to each other, but they're still doing it together. But I think on the VR side, obviously the amount of headsets is a problem. So there's not enough concurrent players. And there's one company in Helsinki, which I'm very familiar with, Hipfire Games, who are trying to build now a cross-platform solution that would bring in like mobile players to combat that there's not enough headsets yet out there. And there's good, but I feel, multi-user is going to be a key part of any VR or AR experience, especially in games.
I feel like I desperately want to add to this. I think I see VR as thousands of times more interesting than AR for a couple of reasons. Number one, most people don't have an interesting space to be in around the world. They want to go somewhere else. And that is thousands of times more than us privileged people that have the wonderful London at our feet right now. So they're looking for escapism en masse, and I think that's the norm. Secondly, is I think we've built entire infrastructure, planes, trains, automobiles, office space, event spaces around bringing people together. In fact, the world has been pretty much structured around bringing people together, and there's billions of pounds of wastage in that. And VR solves that problem almost immediately. It brings you from one space to another space, and you can share that content. It's in its infancy, but I think it fundamentally starts to resolve the reasons we build infrastructure at billions of pounds per day. And that is really compelling. It's a real world solved issue for businesses of every size, for people that have families across the world, and gaming starts to break that down. And having experienced a lot of VR games and playing with other people, I've had amazing experiences and connections that I would not have had in the real life because physically I couldn't do it. So that's why I'm fully invested by the VR side. But I think AR is also amazing and augments the world, and I can think of lots of reasons why I would be into AR as well. But yeah, very different things.
In other words, we're going to destroy the housing market, basically, because all of the central big locations no longer need to be expensive.
Possibly.
Well,
solve the housing market,
on that
which
point,
is more interesting.
yeah, certainly in the UK, office spaces, probably around the world actually, office spaces are becoming emptier, aren't they? And the idea of being a company with staff doesn't mean anymore that you have to have a big building. And we've talked about all throughout today, we've had some fantastic companies that are small teams of people. And that's the thing, isn't it? We are looking for meaningful conversations, meaningful relationships and interactions. We're collaborative beings, aren't we? We're gregarious by nature. Even when we want isolation, there's a certain way we want to have isolation, and we want to have meaning in relationship to everybody else. And all these technologies do that, and we want to have fun. I want to put that word in there again, because that is what we're about here. I'm going to open up some questions, but unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I can only have a few questions. But if there's anything you want to just ask my illustrious panel, please do. Have we stunned you into silence?